Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is Joan Mulvenna, who I met a couple of weeks ago. I was at a free speech event in Manchester City Centre. The description is called Cancelling Cancel Culture. That'll be in the description of this video if you want to come along. It's a free monthly event. And I met Joan there, and Joan was telling me about a new project she's running called Politics in Pubs, which sounds absolutely fantastic. So we had a bit of a chat, and I said, you need to come on my podcast. Lots of people need to know about this and need to hopefully join her organisation and set up their own versions of this across the UK. Let's make this a national project in scheme, because we don't talk about politics enough, and we don't allow people to talk about what they want to talk about and share their opinion, their views, because there's a certain percentage of the population who just want to shut people up because they're the wrong views. They're not my views, so therefore you must be a Nazi, you must be evil because you don't agree with me. And we never used to be like that. So let's get into this. So first of all, welcome Joan to the show.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's great to be here.
No, fantastic. I love your background. So your background is basically what we're going to talk about. Politics in pubs, free speech and open debate. So my first question is, how did this get started? Whose idea was it? Who's involved in it? Was it in the middle of a night in a dream someone came up with the idea, or was you already having a pint in a pub and this just morphed into something you were already sort of doing and chatting about anyway?
Yeah, so a group of us were already meeting. It just so happens that it was during the Brexit stage, post referendum, and before we actually did officially leave the EU. So I don't know if anybody has heard of a group called Leavers of Britain, set up by a very lovely and young woman called Lucy Harris, and that she created a website that allowed people to organise their own Leavers group locally, basically. And it just came at the right time, I think, for a lot of us, but me in particular, where there was a frustration that you couldn't seem to talk about what was happening. And yet we'd voted to leave, and everything seemed to be done to stop that. So that gave a huge impetus to those initial set of meetings. And apart from my husband and a couple of other friends, I didn't know any of the people beforehand. So we were, the Manchester group in particular, were keen to be not just meeting up and networking, but going out in streets and giving out leaflets and things. And that was just the style of it. So then we did officially leave. I'm doing inverted commas there, officially leave. And very soon we hit the pandemic. So we were still meeting, and then we hit the pandemic. So then we started using Zoom. And I think for a lot of people, even just to meet on Zoom and chat during that period, people really appreciated. So when we were then able to meet in pubs, the first thing we were saying, well, what do we do? Do we carry on? The only thing that's really holding us together is is what we started out to do. And the feeling was very much that people did want to carry on. We sort of had a temporary handle or name called Brexit and Beyond. So the politics and pubs evolved over that. So over the past year in particular, we've done some really good thinking about what exactly are we. And we came up with things. We decided in the end we don't want to be another political party. We do want to be across the political spectrum. We don't want to be an echo chamber. We do actually want to meet and talk about politics because, as you said in your introduction, it's become quite difficult to talk about quite a lot of things. For a lot of people think, no, I just don't want to talk about that. And it might be because they know they disagree with you rather than they genuinely don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about it as long as they feel it's someone that agrees with them.
I think that there's also a large portion of people who don't want to talk about it because they're scared stiff of saying the wrong thing and making a mistake. So fear also shuts people up.
Yes, and the sense of it being an argument rather than exploring ideas or just possibly even learning from each other. So we have evolved. We've got a website now, and then we were also thinking, well, since we've created this, I mean, there's generally between 12 and 20 of us. You get to know each other quite well, but what we don't want to do is become a bit of a clique and sort of so that anybody new finds it difficult. So we're very conscious of being sort of I don't know, being a really good group that's hopefully
Welcoming is the word.
exactly welcoming. And then we also thought, well, we've been through these hoops. Let's provide opportunities for other people to do that. So on the website, we give a sort of brief sort of introduction about how people could start up their own group, and that we would then help them advertise it through the website. And you're obviously doing a big job of helping our website get to be known a bit better. So well, the hope is as well. I mean, part of the reason we wanted to carry on is a lot of people in our group felt politically homeless was the common phrase, and I know that's across the board. That's not just people who voted for Brexit. There's lots of people that feel that at the moment. Concern really that there's a huge disconnect between, for want of a better word, the political class and the population as a whole, and that's potentially quite dangerous. I think it would be really dangerous if people switched off completely. So we're trying to be a germ, if you like, that might spread to the point where people find ways of getting their voices heard, getting ideas heard.
And also developing the confidence and the skills to actually talk in front of other people, to start conversations, to be able to finesse what they want to say by trying it with your group first, because we all make mistakes when we're speaking. We all tumble out words when we're trying to think things through, but we need to say them and hear what they sound like and get the feedback from other people for us then to polish them so our sentences become clearer and better. And we need those sort of groups. Otherwise, like I said before, people are scared to speak because they're scared of being clumsy. Now, let me test your thesis on your thesis on this to make sure that you're a genuine group. If we've got somebody who's pro-EU and wants to rejoin the EU and is devastated we left the EU, can they come along and would they be welcome?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, that would be a really useful discussion for us to have, and we don't all agree on everything anyway. There is lots that, I mean, I suppose the key thing is free speech and the idea that it is open debate, so that nobody should be shut down. If someone sends something that is someone else disagrees with, or someone else feels that that's hurtful, you shouldn't be saying that, they can say that, and people might learn. But you can't just say you cannot say that. I think you have to be able to either say why that's a problem, and the person might then think about it, and that's the beauty of free speech, I think, is that it can it's that whole argument about the phrase the wisdom of crowds, that ideas that are woolly or are actually downright bad or dangerous will get honed, as you say, or will get chucked out. Whereas if people are shut into their own little echo chamber, then those ideas won't get improved, or won't get polished, or won't get ditched. So yeah.
And that's why on the TV show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that's why one of those lifelines is ask the audience. Because if you ask mass audiences, the consensus will almost always be the right answer. So we need more voices and more opinions coming into it, because that's how we get to the right answer.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yep.
So talk me through a typical Politics in Pubs event. So let's talk about your specific chapter of this. So when does it run? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it in the evening? It's obviously going to be in a pub. Is it fee paying? How do we set the agenda? Who gets to speak? How do you get your name on a list to speak? Or is it just the loudest voice gets heard? Talk me through the event.
Yeah, great. That's a great, helpful introduction, really. Yeah, so we meet monthly, and that's evolved. And we meet in an evening midweek. We meet it. Our group is in North Manchester, and it's a pub that's got a private room that's free to community groups, which is a real benefit. So it's absolutely free to come to the meetings. I mean, pubs were the natural place to meet, but then that came in and that helped us with the name, and we went through all sorts of possibilities for the name eventually. And it just, when we find politics in pubs, we said that is it, that's obvious. But it took us it took us quite a bit of trial and error to get there. And part of the reason we also thought that was really good, it is our way of helping support pubs, some of which are private businesses, but because if we lose those spaces, that's a huge, it's something very rich that we lose. So anyway, so we meet in the pub. We have we've got two type of meetings, I suppose. To begin with, it was just us. So there's four of us who have sort of self-appointed ourselves as the committee, you know, and it helps if it's a smaller number as well, I suppose. But as soon as somebody wants to kick us off, that'll happen. But we generally propose or ask others through the WhatsApp group, which is wider, for possible topics for the next meeting, and then we decide on one, and we tell people roughly a week in advance. When it works particularly well, someone volunteers to pull together a few key points on the topic that they think would be good to look at. And we have that printed off, a few sheets of paper on the tables in the meeting. And someone also volunteers, usually the same person, to get the conversation started. So they'll speak for maybe 5 minutes, usually not for very long. And then someone chairs. It's usually me, but it doesn't have to be me. Someone chairs, and it's not a formal chairing. It is that, as you say, to make sure it's not just the person who talks the loudest ends up talking the most, and it's to encourage people who haven't said anything yet to feel that they can come in.
And that's really important what you said there. It's about encouraging the people who have made the effort to turn up but haven't got the confidence at that particular moment to push themselves forward to speak. And it's about, a good chair says to them, we've not heard from Margaret yet, we've not heard from Peter yet. Peter, is there anything you want to say? Because once you've offered them the opportunity, they always take it. They just need that little bit of encouragement to feel like they want to join in. And a good chair always sees that and always does that.
And sometimes if it's their first meeting, they'll say, not this time. And that's good as well. People just don't have to feel that obliged to speak. But it's very, very important that everybody feels comfortable about doing it. And in generally, people do event. That it's rare that someone comes to consecutive meetings and doesn't speak. And I suppose the size helps that as well. You know, if we were 100 people, it would be different, a very different atmosphere. So that's one style, and then we usually time it for about 2 hours, and as we get close to the end, then we might sort of have a very rough so what have we got up to? Have we actually decided on anything, or agreed? Are these the things we're still sort of got questions on? So I'm trying to think what were recent topics. Our website we've developed. We've got details of all the meetings we've had since we first started forming, and one of our small group committee does an excellent job of doing not minutes but a rough summary to give a flavour of what the meeting is afterwards, and put that up on the website. There might be something that comes out, oh, maybe that's something that 3 or 4 people feel that they actually want to write to their MPs about, or that they want to maybe do a letter to the newspaper. But again, we're not nobody's under obligation to do that. And more often than not, we've just enjoyed a really good discussion and had the opportunity to explore ideas. And then the other type is where we've an outside speaker. So we're starting to do that now. So as you mentioned, I met you at Cancelling Cancel Culture. So Rob, one of the key people from that, he came to our last Politics in Pubs meeting to talk to us about his group, which was great. And on our this month, we're having a social. It's not a meeting. The regulars are having a bit of a Christmas meal together. But January, so it's the 11th of January, we've got a guy a few of us met at a Battle of Ideas event in Buxton, who's a retired scientist, and he lives in Yorkshire. He's coming across the border, especially to talk to us, which is really kind of us. And he wants to talk about his concerns about the handling of the pandemic. So that'll be he'll talk for how long he wants. We'll recommend that maybe 15 minutes would be ideal, because as a group, we've just got this culture, if you like, or we've learned that people have come and learned that they get a chance to talk. So if an outside speaker goes on for a lot longer in our group, I can't say this for definite, but people might start to get a bit restless. And then February, we've got a woman coming from the Women's Rights Network, again, who we met at the Battle of Ideas, and she's going to talk in particular about transgender rights and impact on women and children. So quite varied topics, and
all crucial topics, though.
Yes, so things that are quite difficult to talk about, as you said. If it came up in a conversation with friends that I know and love and see a lot of, it seems edgy. So it's quite nice to be able to just talk about it,
In a safe space.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that it's a silly phrase, but in this particular incident, it works. It's a safe space that you're not going to get attacked if you slip up and say something that was a little bit, club-footed. You're not going to get attacked for that, because people go, "Oh, I don't think you meant it like that," and you can go, "Oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it," because you feel that, because that's the only way to talk. Now, everything you've talked about, then, if you send me those details of all those events, days, times, how people can register the coming, I'll put all this in the description, so people can go in the description of this video and click the links, and they can get to everything you want them to see, and hopefully let's get more people. So that's have you got any sister groups yet?
There's an attempt to get a group off the ground in Swinton, and we since we came out of the Leavers of Britain groups, we do know of other people who are doing something. They might not yet be calling themselves, or might not even want to ever call themselves, Politics in Pubs. So I know there's a group in Northampton. I know there's a couple of people in Kent. I know people in Sheffield are quite. So we've not invented something new here. We're just sharing it, want to share it, really. And obviously Rob, who we've just mentioned, Cancelling Cancel Culture, that's another group of its own style. So yeah, it's not rocket science in that way. It's people deciding we're going to have to do this ourselves. We can't leave it up to the newspapers, to politicians, or anything else. We need the opportunity to be able to talk about politics.
No, absolutely. And it makes me smile the more I hear about these groups that are setting up to do this, because if we all sit back and we all say, well, just let the politicians do it, if we allow that to happen, we go into some really dark, depressing places if we just rely on politicians to sort our lives out. And I was at an event last night with Calvin Robinson, and I said at that event, we need to get back to the stage where politicians realise they're our servants, they're not our masters. And that seems to have flipped over the last couple of decades, where they seem to think they're our parents. we're going to look after you, we're going to treat you like children, you can't do this, you can't do that, we've got your best interests at heart. And we need to start looking back at politicians going, excuse me, I'm an adult, I'm an Englishman, I'm an Englishwoman, don't tell me what I can and can't do, unless it's against the law. We all should follow the law, but stop treating us like children, because we're your boss at the end of the day, and start doing what we ask you to do instead of doing what you think you want us to do.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something that we come back to a lot in our discussions, that frustration about, they've all, uh, election time, lots of things are said, but then they don't happen. And it's like we don't have any way of having any real impact on that. I mean, my one quibble would be I don't actually think it's dramatically different than it has ever been. I think before most people even had the vote, those people elected tended to see themselves as, oh right, I've been elected, now it's up to me to decide. And I don't go back and talk to people. I get on with it now, and that attitude. And then maybe we're partly to blame, because sometimes it feels useful to be able to say, "Oh yeah, you get on with that. You do the thinking on that, and let us get on with our lives." And so what we need to do is ourselves take responsibility, and not expect other people to sort things out completely themselves. Obviously, we can't individually do it, but we need to take on the responsibility of making sure that what's important is talked about and discussed, and eventually that does feed through. One of the things, sorry, I'm jabbering now, but I've been quite intrigued that recently the phrase energy security and energy independence, those two phrases, are starting to be used by Grant Shapps, isn't that his name, and other politicians. I don't think for 1 minute they maybe mean genuinely what we we would like that to, well, we people who've been talking about it and people who are concerned about being held hostage potentially as a country too easily, so I went jabbering on there and now I've lost track. But I think that's interesting that phrases that other people, I mean, the Reform Party are using that phrase, I think, but it's not so. So that's a way, I think, that things do have an impact.
Yeah, I think as a nation, I seem to think we forget sometimes that the power we have because we're voters. Now, politicians don't care about us individually, because your vote is insignificant for any politician. One person's vote means nothing. But when we can come together, and when politicians are always trying to curry favour with the electorate, because that's how they get elected, they know if more people dislike them than like them, then they're out of a job. So they're constantly trying to find out what the people like, what the people want. And the best examples I can give is we care about plastic straws and we care about elephants. And the reason why I know that is because we're spending taxpayers' money on eradicating plastic straws and protecting elephants. Do you know that we have parts of the British Army in Africa protecting wild elephants? A British soldier got shot dead in the head a couple of years ago protecting elephants. And we're using our taxpayers' money for this. And the reason why is because politicians believe, and rightly so, that their electorate care about those things. So I will spend that money on what they care about. And what they don't care about, I won't spend money on. That's why we have people sleeping rough on the streets in the UK, because the general public really don't care. They think they do, but their actions don't show it because they don't care. We don't care about young white girls being gang raped in all the towns across the country. And the reason why I know that to be true is because the government isn't trying to stop it, isn't spending millions on trying to stop it. So if we can get together and we can show politicians these are the things we care about, and if you don't do these things, we're not going to vote for you. Believe me, they will do as they're told, because all they want is to be elected again. That's the whole point of being a politician is to be elected back in as a politician. They're only chasing votes. And the sooner we realise that, and the sooner we can mobilise, and if our ideas are correct and many people agree with them, then that's how it should work in a democracy. But we forget we have the power. We just forget we've got it.
Yes, yeah. Yes, indeed.
So if somebody wanted to set up their version or a sister version of your Politics in Pubs, they want to be called Politics in Pubs, they want to share your website and they want to be an arm of what you're doing, how would they do that? And is there a procedure for that, or is it contact you and let's talk it through?
Definitely contact us. We'll talk it through and help them. But the practical things, I think, is probably check out your local pubs, see if there is ones that have room for ideally for free. If you can't find a free room, then it's taking a deep breath probably and trusting people and having a whip round on the event so that the event is still free, but people who turn up will contribute, and often it'll cover itself and a bit left over for next time, and it'll build up a bit. That's what happened in the centre of Manchester when we were meeting there. We would pay for the room, but it built up anyway. So that would be your first thing. Hopefully have a couple of other people at least who are interested in it, so someone's not trying to do it all on their own. We'll help publicise, but if they can publicise maybe through social media themselves to begin with, or even local press, etc., telling friends and neighbours as well. We're more than happy to adapt our logo so that instead of, not because we're getting rid of free speech, but it could be Politics in Pubs and their local area in the logo. And we have a Twitter account as well. And if they want to have one, then we can sort that out. But all that, again, will naturally evolve over time. They don't have to do everything at once. And I think that for the first meeting, just sort of see what happens. It's like when you run a party, you don't know who's going to come until it happens. And if not many people turn up, well, you'll have quite a good chat, with just, you can have quite a good chat with 3 people. But
and you sat in a pub with alcohol.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's fine. And I suppose pick a topic as well. Because the hardest thing is for people to talk about something if there isn't a starting topic. But we do often find we go off at a tangent. But again, that's part of the chairing that's not very, not that horrible dictatorial chairing. But if we go off at a tangent and people are interested, what's wrong with that?
Well, that's part of the journey. That's part of the journey of the conversation. If you could plan out the conversation completely in advance, then do you know what? It's not a conversation, is it then? It's then dictate, this is what we're talking about. You want things to go off at tangents because that's how you can explore things that you didn't even know existed, that you never thought about before. And so it should be that free flowing because that's what a conversation is.
Yes, yeah. And it is quite, because it's just yesterday, I think, the group of us, we were thinking about future topics for our group, our own personal group. And we just realized we've never had a meeting focusing on net zero and all the things around that. And we were surprised because we do talk about it a lot. It is actually something that people have got thoughts on and concerns on. So yeah, but yeah, just that just reminded me. You do go off and talk about what you actually want to, and also actually that is one of the things. We come up with a topic, and because it's a week in advance, something else has happened, and people say, no, we want to talk about this. It's fine,
I think you're right. I think there needs to be an element of flexibility. Otherwise, it's not as enjoyable. It's a bit like school. I've got to go. I know. We only can talk about these. It's like, well, no, that's not.
I have to have done my homework.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, sounds fantastic. So, anybody who's interested, please go in the description. Contact Joan. She's more than open to help other people set up their versions of this. If you live in Manchester or near Manchester and you fancy coming along, I'm sure Joan wants as many members and people come along as they can. And if you've got any questions about anything like this, I'm sure Joan will always take your questions and point you in the right direction if she can. Anything else before we go?
Nope, think that's it. Thank you very much, Nick. Yeah.
What is your Twitter account called?
So it's PIPS, which stands for Politics in Pubs.
Oops.
PIPS org UK.
Right. So you
Yeah,
follow
so
on
it's
Twitter.
at PIPS
Yeah.
org. It's sort of our website.
Yeah, and the website is great, politicsinpub.org.uk. I've been on your website. It's nice and simple.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
I think it's really, really good. I go on some people's websites sometimes and you get lost. There's just too much to press and do, where yours is nice and simple. Just gives you the basics of what I was trying to find, which I thought was really, really good.
That's all largely down to Steve D, one of our people. Yeah, he's done a great job. Yep.
It has.
All right.
It has.
Thanks a
No,
lot.
thank you very much, John, for coming along. And whatever I see you doing, I'll try to promote it on my social media. And good luck in the future. And I'm sure
and
I'll
if
see
you
you.
ever wanted to come and talk to us, you'd be more than welcome. But I know you're busy, so that's all right.
Well, let's organise that for, you've got January, February sorted. So in spring sometimes, if you've got a spare date in spring, drop me an email. I'm more than happy to.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, fabulous. Thank you very, very much.
No,
Okay.
more than happy. No, that's fantastic. Thanks for coming along. I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye.